Ghostbusters, Spectral Symphony, Fan Fiction Audiobook. Chapter 1, Prelude to Chaos. The night was dark and stormy, a perfect backdrop for the eerie events that were about to unfold in the heart of New York City. Rain poured from the heavens, the streets glistened under the glow of the city's neon lights, and a chilling wind cut through the bustling metropolis. For most people, it was just another evening in the city that never sleeps. But for the Ghostbusters, it was the beginning of a haunting melody that would resonate through the darkest corners of their memories. The Ghostbusters' iconic firehouse stood tall and imposing on a cobblestone street, a symbol of both safety and fearlessness in the face of the supernatural. Inside, the team was going about their evening routine, which, for Peter Venkman, involved a stack of unpaid bills and a well-worn coffee mug. Meanwhile, Ray Stantz was engrossed in some tinkering with one of Egon Spengler's experimental gadgets, while Winston Zeddemore was restocking the proton packs, the tools of their trade. It was then that the ominous call came in. The phone on the dusty, old, battered desk rang, and Ray answered it with a sense of anticipation. The voice on the other end of the line was frantic, the words rushed and muddled. It was clear that something extraordinary was happening at the prestigious concert hall of New York, the Carnegie Symphony. The Ghostbusters hurriedly donned their proton packs, the iconic gear that had saved the city countless times. Egon Spengler, the brains of the outfit, adjusted the dials on his PKE meter, sensing a disturbance in the city's paranormal energy. Ray couldn't contain his excitement. "Symphony ghosts, Egon!" he exclaimed. "I've always wanted to see one in person." As the team arrived at the scene, the first thing they noticed was the grandeur of the Carnegie Symphony. Its majestic facade was even more impressive at night, with its lights casting an otherworldly glow. But the atmosphere inside was anything but serene. The lobby of the Carnegie Symphony was filled with the sound of dissonant piano notes that reverberated through the hall. A grand piano, seemingly playing itself, floated in midair. Keys danced, strings vibrated, and pedals were pressed by unseen hands. The haunting music that emanated from the ghostly piano was both beautiful and terrifying, an otherworldly melody that reached deep into the souls of those who listened. In an instant, the serene atmosphere of the prestigious concert hall had turned into a nightmarish stage. The audience seats, usually filled with patrons of culture and art, now held terrified onlookers, fleeing in panic as the ghostly piano danced to its own eerie tune. The ceiling seemed to weep with spectral tears, and the chandeliers swayed ominously. The Ghostbusters took a collective breath and, with their proton packs at the ready, stepped forward to confront the supernatural menace. But as they aimed their proton streams at the piano, something unexpected happened. The piano's music intensified, growing louder and more intricate, and the ethereal notes began to coalesce into a spectral form. It was as if the music itself was breathing life into the piano's essence. The team quickly realized they were facing a new and formidable kind of spirit. The ghostly figure resembled a pianist in a tattered tuxedo, his fingers dancing across the ivory keys as if in a trance. His face was obscured by a mask of sorrow and longing, and his eyes shone with a haunting brilliance. As the Ghostbusters fired their proton streams, the ghostly pianist responded by playing even more intensely. A shockwave of spectral energy burst forth, throwing the team off their feet and shattering the magnificent glass windows that adorned the lobby. It was a power they had never encountered before. The Ghostbusters retreated, battered and bruised, realizing that this was no ordinary apparition. The ghostly pianist's music was not just a weapon, it was a source of power. As they regrouped outside, the team knew they were facing a threat unlike any they had encountered before. The rain continued to pour, and the city's neon lights seemed to flicker in response to the otherworldly presence that now haunted the Carnegie Symphony. This was just the beginning, a prelude to a symphony of chaos that would echo through the city's darkest corners. The Ghostbusters had a daunting task ahead of them, for they had to unravel the mysteries of this supernatural melody and put an end to the haunting crescendo that had only just begun. Chapter 2: Musical Menace. Following their harrowing encounter with the ghostly pianist at the Carnegie Symphony, the Ghostbusters returned to their firehouse with a newfound sense of urgency. The supernatural threat they had just faced was unlike anything they had dealt with before, and it had left them with more questions than answers. Egon Spengler, always the analytical mind, began researching the recent paranormal activities while the team recuperated. He worked diligently, sifting through historical records and spectral data, trying to find any connection between the haunting melodies they had encountered and the restless spirits of the city. As he sorted through the information, a pattern emerged. Music, Egon mused. It's all about music. These are not just your run-of-the-mill apparitions. They are musical ghosts, and they are becoming stronger. Ray Stantz, who had always been fascinated by the paranormal, leaned over Egon's shoulder to get a better look at the data. Egon, do you think there's a connection between the types of music these ghosts are associated with and their powers? Egon nodded, his expression as serious as ever. It's a distinct possibility. Music has always had a powerful effect on human emotions and energy, and it seems these spirits are tapping into that energy source to manifest themselves and increase their power. Winston Zeddemore, who had seen his fair share of supernatural phenomena, chimed in. So what's our next move, Egon? We investigate further, Egon replied. We need to find out where these musical ghosts are appearing and what kind of music they are associated with. Once we understand that, we can begin to counteract their influence. With a plan in place, the Ghostbusters set out to explore different parts of the city, tracking down the locations where the musical ghosts had been reported. Their first stop was Central Park, where reports of a saxophone-playing ghost had recently surfaced. As they ventured deeper into the park, they heard the melancholic strains of a saxophone in the distance. The ghostly saxophonist, a figure in a tattered jazz-era suit, stood beneath a lamppost, his spectral fingers gracefully dancing over the instrument. His music was a haunting blend of jazz and blues, a melody that captured the essence of the city's soul. The Ghostbusters knew they had to act quickly. The battle with the saxophonist was intense. He used the power of his music to manipulate the environment, causing the trees to sway and the very earth to tremble. It was only through teamwork and clever use of their proton streams that the team managed to capture the ghost and contain his musical energy. Their next destination was the subway system, where a violinist ghost had been causing disturbances. The subway tunnels echoed with the mournful strains of a ghostly violin, and commuters had been reporting eerie encounters during their late-night rides. In the dimly lit subway station, the violinist ghost appeared, his spectral bow gliding gracefully across the strings. The violinist's music seemed to tug at the heartstrings of all who heard it, evoking deep emotions and, in some cases, overwhelming sorrow. As the Ghostbusters engaged in another supernatural battle, the power of music became evident once more. The violinist's notes were not just haunting. They had a physical force that could disrupt the team's proton streams. Finally, the team ventured to Times Square, where a rock star apparition had been drawing large crowds with its electrifying presence. The ghostly rock star, clad in leather and wielding a spectral guitar, played riffs that reverberated through the heart of the city. The people gathered in Times Square were entranced, but the Ghostbusters saw through the illusion. The battle with the rock star ghost was a high-octane showdown, with the spirit using the energy of the crowd's excitement to fuel its power. As the Ghostbusters wrestled with the ghostly performer, They realized that each of these musical ghosts was not just using music as a weapon, but was growing stronger by feeding on the emotions and energy of the city itself. Back at the firehouse, the team reconvened to share their findings. Egon explained, "It's clear that these musical ghosts are not malevolent in the traditional sense. They are driven by a powerful need to fulfill their musical purpose, and as they do, they draw strength from the emotions and energy of the city. We need to find a way to break this cycle." The team had encountered a new and formidable challenge. These musical menaces were not just threats to the city, they were a reflection of its heart and soul. The Ghostbusters knew they had to unravel the mystery of the Spectral Symphony and put an end to the haunting crescendo that was now echoing through the city's darkest corners. Chapter 3: Unearthly Melodies. As the Ghostbusters delved deeper into their investigation, Egon Spengler became more engrossed in his research. His lab was cluttered with stacks of books, papers, and the hum of experimental equipment. The faint echoes of ghostly music played in the background as he meticulously analyzed the spectral data collected from their encounters with the musical spirits. One evening, Egon called the team together for an important announcement. The room was dimly lit, and the soft glow of the computers illuminated Egon's face as he revealed his findings. "I've been analyzing the spectral music left by these spirits," Egon began, his tone as measured as ever. "And I've made a significant discovery. There's a common thread that links them all, a recurring musical motif that connects their otherworldly melodies." Ray leaned forward, intrigued. "A common musical motif, Egon? What could it mean?" Egon continued, "It's more than just a motif. It's a fragment of a composition, a piece of music that appears to be incomplete. And this composition is the key to understanding the intentions of these musical ghosts." Winston pondered. "So, you're saying they're trying to complete this composition?" Egon nodded. "Exactly. The music they produce is not for malevolent purposes. It's a manifestation of their drive to complete this composition to fulfill their musical purpose." With a series of keystrokes and the adjustment of a holographic display, Egon revealed an image of an old, tattered musical score, which bore the title, Symphony of the Unseen. The team gazed at it in awe, realizing that they had stumbled upon a piece of music that had been lost to time. Egon explained, "This composition is attributed to a long-forgotten composer by the name of Alexander von Spectrali. He was a musical genius, known for his profound love of both New York City and the art of composition." Ray's eyes widened. "Von Spectrali? I've heard the name before in obscure music history books, but I thought his compositions were never completed." Egon nodded. "That's the tragedy. Von Spectrali was a gifted composer who was wronged in his time. He aspired to create a masterpiece that would bridge the gap between the living and the dead using the power of music. But his composition was deemed too unconventional and was never performed. He died unfulfilled, and in obscurity, his musical vision left incomplete." Winston realized the connection. "So, these musical ghosts are manifestations of von Spectrali's unfinished work. They're searching for a way to complete his magnum opus." Egon confirmed. "Precisely. The spectral music they produce is an attempt to recreate and, in a way, remember the composition that was unjustly denied to von Spectrali in life. It seems they have been trapped in a state of limbo, unable to move on until they fulfill their musical purpose." The team fell silent, absorbing the weight of the revelation. These musical ghosts were not malevolent beings seeking to harm the living, but were driven by an unquenchable desire to complete what had been denied to them in life. Peter Venkman, typically the one to break the tension with a joke, spoke somberly. "So, we're not dealing with the usual bust and banish scenario, are we?" Egon replied. No, Peter, we're not. We have to find a way to help these spirits fulfill their purpose so they can find peace and release their hold on the city. As the Ghostbusters contemplated their next steps, they knew that this investigation was unlike any they had undertaken before. The ghosts they faced were not just a threat, they were a reflection of a composer's lost dreams, and they had the power to unite the living and the dead through the Spectral Symphony of Alexander von Spectrali. Chapter 4: Scavenger Hunt. The Ghostbusters, having unraveled the mystery behind the musical ghosts and their connection to Alexander von Spectrali's incomplete composition, were faced with a new challenge: collecting the scattered musical notes needed to complete the symphony and, in the process, help the restless spirits find peace. Egon, ever the meticulous planner, had charted out a map of the city with potential locations where the musical notes might be hidden. He was in the process of explaining their strategy to the team in the firehouse's command center. We have identified several locations that are historically significant to von Spectrali, Egon said, gesturing to a series of red pins on a digital map. We believe these may be the places where the musical notes are hidden. We need to act quickly to find them before the Spectral Symphony is completed, with potentially devastating consequences. The team geared up and split into smaller groups, each tasked with investigating one of the potential locations. Their first destination was a grand and opulent theater that had once been a hotspot for the city's elite. This was where von Spectrali had been denied the chance to debut his composition. The theater was bathed in a pale, ghostly light. As they explored the abandoned building, eerie notes of music floated through the air, played by an unseen hand. The ghostly figures of a symphony conductor and an orchestra appeared on the stage, their instruments playing in harmony with the ethereal composition. It was a haunting sight, and it became clear that the musical ghosts were not going to relinquish the notes easily. A ghostly flutist with transparent fingers and a mournful expression emerged, weaving the composition's melodies with each breath into her flute. The challenge here was not just to capture the ghost, but to recover the first musical note. The Ghostbusters had to work in unison, utilizing their proton packs strategically to disrupt the ghostly orchestra. After a difficult battle, they managed to capture the flutist and secure the first musical note. It was an exhilarating but demanding experience that set the tone for what lay ahead. Their next location was an old library, known to have housed von Spectrali's personal collection of musical compositions. As the team entered, they were greeted by an eerie silence, and the ancient tomes seemed to whisper secrets from centuries past. The ghostly librarian, an austere figure in period clothing, emerged, her spectral form flipping through the pages of one of von Spectrali's compositions. The librarian, clearly protective of the composer's work, summoned a spectral wind that sent books and papers flying. It became a race against time, as the team needed to recover the second musical note before the ghostly librarian could unleash the full force of her spectral knowledge. Peter, ever resourceful, used his wit and knowledge of musical history to engage the librarian in conversation. He asked about von Spectrali's life and music, effectively distracting her while Winston and Ray gathered the scattered sheets of music. With a final stroke of genius, Peter complimented the librarian on her knowledge, gaining her approval and the second musical note. With two notes in hand, the Ghostbusters moved to the next location on their list, a derelict opera house where von Spectrali had once dreamed of performing his symphony. But little did they know that the musical ghosts were growing increasingly powerful, and the challenges that awaited them would test their knowledge, their abilities, and their ability to work as a team. As they stood before the grand stage of the opera house, a chilling aria began to echo through the empty hall, and a ghostly soprano in a tattered opera gown appeared. Her voice was hauntingly beautiful, but the intensity of her music created a palpable atmosphere of tension and fear. The battle with the opera ghost was a dramatic crescendo of energy and emotion. She summoned spectral curtains and chandeliers that swung like pendulums. As the team fought to capture the ghost, it became clear that these musical ghosts were evolving, becoming more creative and powerful with each encounter. At the last moment, Ray, inspired by the beauty of the music, stepped forward and joined the soprano in a duet. Their voices harmonized in a way that touched the heart of the opera ghost. She willingly released the third musical note, recognizing that the Ghostbusters' mission was not to erase her memory but to fulfill her purpose. As they secured the third musical note, the team understood that the scavenger hunt was not just about capturing ghosts, but about understanding their pain and their deep connection to Von Spectrali's composition. The ghosts were not malevolent. They were lost souls seeking to complete the masterpiece they had been denied in life. Tensions were high as the team continued their hunt for the remaining notes, knowing that the fate of the city rested in their hands. With each note they collected, they drew closer to the completion of the Spectral Symphony, and the city's destiny was tied to the harmonious or disharmonious conclusion of the music they were recovering. Chapter 5. Notes of the Past. The Ghostbusters had successfully gathered several musical notes, scattered throughout New York City, each representing a piece of Alexander von Spectrali's unfinished composition. The more notes they collected, the deeper they delved into the tragic history of the composer, which in turn brought them closer to understanding the purpose of the Spectral Symphony. Egon's research had unearthed a treasure trove of information about Alexander von Spectrali. They learned that he had been a brilliant, yet reclusive composer who had lived in New York City during the late 19th century. His life was marked by a profound love for music and a deep connection to the city itself. However, von Spectrali's talent had gone largely unrecognized during his time, and he had fallen into obscurity, never able to complete his magnum opus. As they explored the depths of his story, the Ghostbusters couldn't help but sympathize with the composer. His tale was one of unfulfilled dreams, a haunting resonance that mirrored the ghosts they were dealing with. It was clear that these apparitions were not malevolent, but driven by an overpowering need to see their composer's work brought to completion. The team's bond strengthened as they worked together to solve riddles and discover the hidden locations of the notes. Ray, with his infectious enthusiasm, was the first to spot a connection between the notes and the city's landmarks. Peter's witty humor provided moments of respite in the midst of the increasingly intense investigations, and Winston's calm demeanor and practical approach kept them grounded. Their search led them to historical archives, hidden basements, and even to the underground network of old New York subway tunnels. Every location they visited was filled with the echoes of von Spectrali's past and the tragic resonance of his incomplete masterpiece. The urgency to complete the composition intensified as the city's paranormal activity escalated. The spectral disturbances grew in frequency and power, threatening to spiral out of control. The team understood that they were in a race against time. The more notes they collected, the closer they came to unlocking the Spectral Symphony's true potential, and the more they could bring harmony to the city. Each note they found revealed a piece of von Spectrali's life story. Some were linked to his early years in New York, while others hinted at his heartache and isolation. It became evident that the ghosts were not only trying to fulfill the composer's dream, but also to heal their own painful pasts. As they pieced together the final elements of the composition, the Ghostbusters found themselves emotionally invested in the story of Alexander von Spectrali and the musical ghosts. They knew that their mission was not just about capturing ghosts. It was about bringing closure to souls that had been trapped in an eternal, ghostly symphony of longing. With the Spectral Symphony drawing closer to completion, The Ghostbusters felt the weight of their responsibilities and the impact their actions would have on the city they loved. It was in this moment that they realized that they weren't just ghost hunters. They were the orchestrators of a unique and profound healing for the city of New York. Chapter 6: The Final Crescendo. The Ghostbusters stood at the precipice of the unknown, their proton packs humming with anticipation. In the dimly lit, eerie concert hall that served as the final battleground, they were ready to confront the ghostly conductor who held the completed Spectral Symphony. As they gazed upon the sheet music that floated in midair, illuminated by an ethereal glow, they understood the magnitude of what was at stake. The conductor ghost, a gaunt figure in a tattered tuxedo, swirled around the room with an air of authority. His skeletal fingers danced through the air, directing the spectral orchestra to play the symphony. The melodies were hauntingly beautiful, each note carrying an otherworldly power that tugged at the Ghostbusters' very souls. Egon, the team's resident physicist and researcher, studied the composition with a furrowed brow. "This is it, the culmination of von Spectrali's life's work," he murmured, his voice quivering with a mix of awe and trepidation. "This symphony is the key to binding the spirits to the living world, and we must ensure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands." As the team inched closer, the conductor turned his ghostly gaze toward them. His eyes glowed with an unsettling brilliance, and a malevolent grin crept across his transparent face. "You meddling mortals think you can stop me? I am the maestro of the spectral realm. This composition shall unleash the power I deserve." Winston, the Ghostbusters' voice of reason and courage, stepped forward. "We're not here to deny you your due, but this symphony could have catastrophic consequences for the living world. We need to find another way." But the conductor remained resolute, waving his baton in a grandiose arc. The music intensified, its enchanting yet ominous notes resonating through the hall, threatening to unravel the fabric of reality itself. The air grew heavy, and the world began to twist and distort. Ray, the heart of the team, felt a pang of desperation. "We don't have much time. This composition is a ticking time bomb. If we can't stop it, the city, and perhaps the world, will be torn apart by these spectral forces." In a coordinated effort, the Ghostbusters unleashed their proton streams, firing a web of energy toward the conductor. But the spectral maestro was no pushover. He countered with a dissonant wave of music, causing their proton streams to falter and dissipate. Desperation clawed at them as they realized that they needed to match music with music, not proton beams. Peter, the team's irreverent joker, and a gifted saxophonist in his own right, stepped forward with a plan. He withdrew a saxophone he had carried for just this occasion and began to play a jazz tune, his fingers dancing over the keys. The spectral symphony wavered as it clashed with Peter's improvised jazz melody. The conductor ghost recoiled, clearly disturbed by the interruption. A hint of fear flickered in his spectral eyes. Egon's eyes lit up with realization. "Music! That's the key. Von Spectrali's music is a manifestation of his emotions and desires. If we can overpower his malevolent composition with something more powerful, we can break his control over it." The team joined in, each member adding their musical talents to Peter's jazz, creating a counter melody that challenged the conductor's hold on the spectral symphony. It was a musical showdown, a battle of harmonies and dissonance, a testament to the power of music to bind or unbind the supernatural. The room trembled, and the conductor ghost's form flickered in and out of existence. His grasp on the symphony began to wane, and a desperate cry filled the air as he lost control. The composition fractured, notes scattering like fireflies in the night, and the room bathed in a radiant, ethereal light. In the climax of their musical duel, the Ghostbusters overcame the conductor's malevolence and seized control of the spectral symphony. The conductor, now bereft of his power, dissipated into a burst of brilliant spectral energy. The composition, once a tool of chaos, now stood as a force for healing and closure. With the symphony's melodies now under their command, the Ghostbusters felt a profound sense of responsibility. They had harnessed a force of the supernatural world and tamed it for the good of the living. The world outside the concert hall began to regain its stability as the spectral forces withdrew. But the team knew that their mission wasn't over yet. With the Spectral Symphony in their possession, they had to ensure it was used wisely and that the city's wounds would be healed. Their journey had reached a pivotal moment, and their ultimate challenge lay ahead. Chapter 7: A Haunting Redemption. The battle raged on as the Ghostbusters struggled to wrest control of the Spectral Symphony composition from the conductor Ghost. Arcs of proton beams crisscrossed the dimly lit chamber, illuminating the ghostly conductor's sinister grin and the ethereal music sheets that seemed to come to life, weaving around him like a cocoon. Egon, his brow furrowed in concentration, adjusted his proton pack settings to emit a harmonious frequency. He knew that the key to breaking the conductor's hold on the symphony was not in overpowering force, but in outsmarting the specter with the very music it sought to wield as a weapon. Ray and Winston worked in tandem, creating a protective barrier of proton energy to shield Peter and Egon as they continued their efforts to disrupt the conductor's control over the spectral music. With each burst of energy, the notes wavered, and the conductor's control weakened. Meanwhile, Peter, an unlikely music aficionado, found himself digging deep into his memory. He recalled the haunting tunes he'd learned as a child from his grandmother's old piano, and an idea struck him. "Egon, we need to play the notes. The right melody can break his hold." Egon nodded in agreement, and Peter, driven by a newfound sense of purpose, grabbed a nearby piano, its keys untouched by human hands for decades. He began to play a haunting, melancholic melody that resonated with the notes of the Spectral Symphony. The ethereal music sheets, once working in unison with the conductor, started to unravel. The conductor's malevolent grin twisted into a mask of anguish. The symphony was no longer his to command, and he realized that his grip on the composition was slipping away. The otherworldly melodies now followed Peter's lead, creating a discord that sent shivers through the ghostly conductor's form. Desperation etched on the conductor's face. He raised his spectral baton and tried to reassert control, but it was too late. The symphony spiraled out of his reach, encircling him like a swirling tempest of musical notes. Peter's piano and the proton beams worked in tandem, harmonizing and strengthening the dissonance, making it impossible for the conductor to maintain control. With a final, defiant sweep of his baton, the conductor emitted a mournful, soul-rending cry as the composition slipped from his grasp. The spectral symphony began to play itself, harmonizing, and finally, the conductor was enveloped by the music. His ghostly form shimmered and wavered, caught in a transformative whirlwind. As the symphony reached its crescendo, the conductor, now bathed in a radiant light, began to conduct with newfound purpose. The notes swirled around him, fusing into a symphony that transcended the boundaries of life and death. The room filled with an otherworldly beauty, and the city beyond responded to the haunting melody. The spectral symphony radiated throughout the city, bridging the gap between the living and the dead. Ghostly apparitions that had tormented the city now began to converge on the concert hall, drawn by the captivating music. The living were equally entranced, drawn to the ethereal sounds that resonated with their own memories and emotions. In a harmonious union of the living and the dead, the spectral symphony brought reconciliation and closure to the city. Ghosts found solace, their unfinished business resolved, while the living were comforted by the knowledge that the spirits of the past were at peace. The conductor, now transformed and redeemed, raised his baton one last time, conducting the symphony with unparalleled grace. His music reached the farthest corners of the city, mending the broken, healing the wounded, and bringing a sense of unity that New York had not felt in a long time. With a final, sublime note, the conductor, his purpose fulfilled, faded away into a gentle, radiant light. The symphony continued to play, echoing through the hearts of those who had heard it, and the city fell into a profound calm. The Ghostbusters lowered their proton packs, watching in awe as the city was bathed in the spectral symphony of healing and closure. They had completed their most unique and emotionally charged mission to date, and the bonds between them had grown stronger through their shared ordeal. Chapter 8: The City's Healing Song. The Ecto-1 rumbled through the darkened streets of New York City, its iconic siren now silenced, and the green neon Ghostbusters sign glowing softly in the night. The atmosphere was different as the team made their way back to their headquarters at the Ghostbusters firehouse. Gone were the echoes of spectral screams and the frantic bustle of a city in peril. In its place, a serene calm had settled over the metropolis. As they entered the firehouse, their proton packs and traps now resting, the Ghostbusters couldn't help but look at each other with a mix of exhaustion and pride. Peter Venkman, with his ever-present sardonic smile, broke the silence. "Well, that was one for the history books, huh?" Winston Zeddemore nodded, his usually stoic demeanor softened by a deep sense of satisfaction. "I've never seen anything like it. Those spirits, they weren't just causing trouble. They were healing something deep in the city." Ray Stantz, the heart of the team, ran a hand through his unruly hair. "It's almost poetic, you know? These ghosts, searching for redemption through music, and they found it. They brought unity and closure to the city." Egon Spengler, the resident genius, adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat. "Our analysis of the Spectral Symphony's effects is remarkable. It's as if the composition itself acted as a balm to soothe the collective wounds of New York." The team gathered around the central table, where the city's map lay scattered with notes and research materials. They watched as Winston turned on a TV, showing footage of the city. It was a different New York, one where people were huddled together in Central Park, holding hands and swaying to an unseen melody. The subway platforms were filled with commuters playing violins and cellos, while the once chaotic Times Square now hosted a massive rock concert, the spirits playing to an eager and grateful audience. "Look at that," Winston said, his voice filled with awe. "It's like the city found its own rhythm, its own heartbeat." Peter, ever the realist, couldn't resist a witty remark. "So, you're saying New York owes its new piece to a bunch of ghosts and their symphony? We should have become conductors a long time ago." Egon, however, was quick to correct him. "No, Peter. It's not just the ghosts. It's the people. The living have embraced this unique situation, and they've found solace in the music. The two worlds, living and spectral, have become harmonious." Ray chimed in, his eyes sparkling with hope. "It's as if the spirits wanted to contribute something beautiful to the city that they never had the chance to in life. And New York is responding in kind." Outside, the city was alive with a spectral symphony. It was a chorus of unity, a hauntingly beautiful song of closure. The Ghostbusters shared a moment of silent reflection, taking in the profound impact of their latest adventure. As the evening turned into night, the team decided to take a well-deserved break. They headed up to the rooftop of the firehouse, where they sat on folding chairs and gazed at the stars above. The Ecto-1 sat below, bathed in a gentle moonlight. The sounds of the spectral symphony filled the air, a reminder of the profound connection between the living and the dead. In the distance, the skyline of New York City shimmered with an ethereal glow, a testament to the healing power of music and the unyielding spirit of the Ghostbusters. The city's heart was beating to a new rhythm, a song of unity, and for a moment, all was right in the world. The Ghostbusters took a deep breath and shared a silent toast to their mission's success, to the city's newfound harmony, and to the bonds that had grown stronger through the challenges they had faced. As they looked out at the transformed city, they couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. Their work was done, at least for now, and New York had found its own healing song. Chapter 9. Farewell to Friends. The Ghostbusters stood in the heart of Central Park, surrounded by the peaceful serenity that had replaced the chaos and discord that had reigned not so long ago. The saxophone playing ghost, who had once been a source of turmoil, now stood before them, its once turbulent spirit now visibly at ease. Its spectral notes no longer wailed in disarray but flowed in gentle, harmonic melodies that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the park. As the gentle wind rustled through the trees and the setting sun cast a warm glow upon the scene, the team prepared to bid farewell to their musical spectral friend. There was a poignant air of closure about them, for they had, in a strange twist of fate, found themselves empathizing with the very entities they had set out to capture. Winston, his voice laden with a newfound appreciation for the supernatural, addressed the saxophonist. "You've shown us a different side of your kind, my friend. You were seeking to complete your masterpiece, and in doing so, you brought the city together." The saxophonist nodded, its ethereal form shimmering in agreement. Ray, his curiosity unquenched, asked, "Do you have any final words? Anything you wish to say before you move on?" The ghost saxophonist paused for a moment, as if contemplating its reply. It began to play a somber but beautiful melody, one that resonated deep within the hearts of the Ghostbusters. It was a wordless farewell, a poignant expression of gratitude and understanding. Egon, the scientist among them, couldn't help but ponder the implications of their recent encounters. "This entire experience has challenged our understanding of the spectral realm. These entities were not malevolent. They were driven by their own desires and tragedies." As the musical notes from the saxophonist's instrument enveloped them, Peter looked around at the transformed park. Families played, couples strolled hand in hand, and children laughed without fear. "It's like this place has been reborn. Who would have thought we'd be part of something like this?" The Ghostbusters then turned to the other musical spirits that had converged around them, the violinist ghost and the rock star apparition. It was clear that they, too, were at peace and ready to move on. The violinist gave a graceful bow with its spectral instrument, while the rock star raised a guitar pick in salute. Winston stepped forward and offered his hand to the violinist. "You made our subway rides a lot more interesting, my friend. Good luck on your next gig." Ray added, "And you, our rock star, you sure knew how to put on a show. Take care out there." With their final farewell said, the musical spirits slowly began to ascend, their forms dissolving into the ether. The notes of their music lingered in the air, a fond memory of their presence in the city. As the last traces of the musical ghosts disappeared, the Ghostbusters felt a profound sense of fulfillment. They had not only saved the city from chaos, but had also granted peace to these unique and misunderstood entities. It was a reminder of the extraordinary nature of their profession and the unexpected connections they formed with the spectral world. Back at their firehouse, the team celebrated their victory with a sense of unity and camaraderie stronger than ever before. The events of the past few days had forged unbreakable bonds among them, and they knew that their journey in the supernatural world was far from over. With their proton packs ready and their spirits lifted, the Ghostbusters looked forward to the adventures that awaited them, ever prepared to confront whatever spectral challenges came their way. Chapter 10. Harmonious Conclusion. As the sun dipped below the New York City skyline, casting a warm, golden glow across the urban landscape, the streets came alive with the sounds of life. The city had been forever changed by the Spectral Symphony, the haunting melodies of which had once brought chaos and fear, now echoed in harmony and hope. New Yorkers, young and old, gathered in parks, on sidewalks, and even on rooftop gardens to listen to the enchanting music that floated through the air. High above the streets, atop the iconic Chandler building, the Ghostbusters had set up their equipment to monitor the Spectral Symphony's effects on the city. Egon adjusted the settings on the PKE meter, watching as the readings indicated a surge in positive psychic energy. "It's working," he murmured, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. Winston, standing beside him, nodded. "We did it, Egon. We brought peace to the city. It's beautiful." Down on the streets, Ray and Peter stood with the crowd, their proton packs now safely stowed away. They watched as the conductor ghost, once a malevolent force, conducted the Spectral Symphony with passion and grace. Each note resonated with the heart and soul of New York and the spirits of the departed, who had once been bound by their unfulfilled desires, now found solace. Ray couldn't help but smile as he looked around. "You know, Peter, this is what it's all about. Helping people, even if they're not among the living." Peter nodded, his eyes fixed on the conductor. "Yeah, Ray. It's funny, but I think we're finally making a real difference in this city." The crowd below erupted in applause as the symphony reached its crescendo, and the conductor ghost took a bow, his ethereal form radiating with a sense of fulfillment. With a final sweep of his conductor's wand, he dissolved into a shimmering mist, ascending to a place of peace and tranquility. As the last haunting notes faded into the night, the city's residents, once separated by their daily grind, were now united in a shared experience. Strangers hugged, and neighbors exchanged knowing smiles. The air was charged with a newfound sense of unity and connection. The Ghostbusters made their way down from the rooftop, joining the jubilant crowd below. Egon held his PKE meter aloft, capturing the readings of positive psychic energy emanating from the city, while Winston patted him on the back, acknowledging their hard-earned success. Ray and Peter approached, their expressions filled with contentment. "Well, guys, I'd say that's a job well done," Ray declared. Peter, usually one for humor, nodded in solemn agreement. "For once, I can't think of a snappy one-liner. This is enough." And it was. The Ghostbusters, who had once been seen as nothing more than eccentric exterminators of the supernatural, were now true heroes of the city. Their actions had brought healing and closure to the spirits of New York, and in doing so, they had earned the respect and gratitude of its living inhabitants. The symphony had created a bond that transcended the mortal realm, bridging the gap between the living and the dead. It was a testament to the power of music and the enduring spirit of the city itself. As the city of New York reveled in its newfound harmony, the Ghostbusters stood together, ready for any future paranormal threats that might arise. Their proton packs, once weapons of destruction, now felt like instruments of balance in a world where the supernatural and the natural could coexist. Hey there, fellow fiction enthusiasts. I hope you've been enjoying the audio stories on MutedGamerFiction as much as I've loved bringing them to you. Your support means the world to me, and today, I've got a small request for you. If you've been relishing these audiobooks and fan fiction tales, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, drop a comment, and, of course, subscribe if you haven't already. Your likes, comments, and subscriptions are like fuel to my storytelling fire, and they keep this channel going strong. I'd also love to hear from you. Whether you've got a particular fan fiction suggestion you're dying to share, or simply want to say hi, Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. This channel is a community of like-minded fans, and your input is incredibly valuable. So, thank you once again for being a part of Muted Gamer Fiction. Keep those headphones on, immerse yourself in our stories, and let's continue this exciting journey together. Your support keeps the stories coming, and I can't wait to see what fan fiction ideas you have in mind. Happy listening, and remember to hit those like, comment, and subscribe buttons. See you in the next chapter.